Heartbreakingly, the story you're about to hear is one that feels all too familiar. It's the kind of story women across the country know in the pit of their stomachs. A woman out for a run, a walk, or simply enjoying a moment of peace, and then suddenly, she's gone, vanished without a trace. For women, the fear of being abducted while exercising, hiking, or just moving through the world is far too real. It shouldn't be. No one should have to worry about their safety while taking a jog or enjoying the outdoors. But the truth is, that fear exists, and with good reason. In Georgia alone, we've seen devastating headlines. Meredith Emerson, abducted and murdered while hiking Blood Mountain in 2008. Laken Riley, a 22-year-old student, murdered while jogging on the University of Georgia's campus. A tragedy that sparked national headlines and even legislation in her honor. These women were simply living their lives until someone decided to take that away. And those are only cases in Georgia. Across the country, women like Eliza Fletcher in Memphis, Molly Tibbetts in Iowa, and Wendy Karina Martinez in Washington, D.C. remind us of just how widespread this nightmare really is. Women going for a jog, enjoying fresh air, minding their own business, only to be watched, hunted, and killed. Whether in the shadows or in broad daylight, this danger is ever present.
Female runners face a very difficult reality, and not just focusing on the run ahead, but their safety too. And women tell us they shouldn't fear what time of the day they run and should never be shamed for it.
I had a gun pulled on me while I was running, and one of the first things people said to me is, "Why were you running so early alone?" And she was just doing something she loved.
And while women can take every precaution, running in daylight, choosing crowded paths, carrying protection, sometimes even that isn't enough when faced with an attacker determined to do harm. This is the devastating reality women live with every single day. But not every case follows the same tragic pattern. We also remember stories like Sherry Papini, who faked her own abduction while jogging, exploiting the very real fears women face to stage her disappearance. Today's case falls firmly in the heartbreaking category. Kristi Cornwell was 38 years old and loved taking evening walks in the hot, humid summer air, something so many of us can relate to. But one night, she never came home. She seemed to vanish from the quiet Blairsville, Georgia road that she so frequented. Over a year later, it would be her own brother who found her remains. And while investigators and the public believe they know who's responsible, her case is still officially considered unsolved. Today, I'll dive behind the headlines of the haunting story of Kristi Cornwell. Kristi Leigh Cornwell was born on December 20th, 1970, in the quiet mountain town of Hiawassee, Georgia. She grew up just down the road in Blairsville, where her family was deeply rooted in the close-knit community nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Surrounded by the rolling hills and the Chattahoochee National Forest, Blairsville was the kind of place where neighbors knew one another, where family ties ran deep. Neighbors didn't bother locking their doors at night, and where Kristi felt most at home. Her mother would later say that Kristi never strayed far from the mountains or from her family. The furthest she ever lived was about 80 miles away while attending college in Dalton. Kristi grew up with just one sibling, a younger brother named Richard, and the two shared an inseparable bond. From the very beginning, they were each other's built-in best friend, always there for one another through every stage of life. Their childhood in Blairsville was as carefree as it was close-knit, filled with the kind of simple joys that come from growing up in a small mountain town. They shared a love for the outdoors and a passion for riding horses, often spending hours exploring the fields and wooded trails near their home. Surrounded by the beauty of the Blue Ridge Mountains, their childhood had an almost idyllic quality, quiet, safe, and rooted in family. Blairsville, with its wide open spaces and sense of community, offered them the freedom to roam and dream while giving them a foundation built on closeness and trust. Faith was also central to Kristi's life. She was an active member of Crossover Community Church in Blue Ridge and dedicated herself to service, even serving on the board of the Wilderness Scouts of America. Those who knew her described her as trusting, kind, and devoted, not only to her goals, but to her community. Kristi's professional life reflected that same sense of determination and strength. After earning a degree in criminal justice from North Georgia College in 1992, she worked as a probation officer and even spent time working in a sheriff's office. Friends and family described her as tough, capable, and unafraid to stand her ground, qualities that served her well in law enforcement. But in 2002, she stepped away from that career to pursue new ambitions, returning to school to study medical laboratory technology at Dalton State College. Outside of her professional and academic life, Kristi was a devoted mother. She shared custody of her teenage son Brody, and despite life's challenges, including multiple divorces, she remained grounded in her family and her faith. In the summer of 2009, between semesters at Dalton State, she was living with her mother in Blairsville and spending time with the people and places that mattered most. Kristi Cornwell was a woman of resilience, caring, ambitious, and deeply tied to her roots in the Georgia mountain, which makes the events of one August evening all the more haunting. On a warm summer night, as she set out for one of her evening walks down a familiar country road, Kristi could not have known that it would be the last time her loved ones would see her alive. It was the evening of Tuesday, August 11th, 2009, a hot, heavy summer night in northern Georgia. That summer, Kristi had developed a ritual of going on late evening walks along the quiet rural roads near her family's home. For her, these strolls were more than just an exercise. They were a way to unwind, to soak in the calm of the countryside, and to ease the lingering pain from a back injury she had suffered earlier that year. After slipping on the stairs and injuring her tailbone, walking became both therapy and escape. It made sense that she chose the evenings. In the South, August days are brutally hot and humid, so the later hours offered at least a small break from the sweltering air. These walks had become a peaceful routine, a way for Kristi to reclaim a bit of solitude in the midst of a busy and transitional time in her life. Her mother worried about her walking alone, especially so close to dusk, but Kristi was 38 years old, strong-willed and far from naive. She had worked in law enforcement, spent years as a probation officer, and knew how to take care of herself. Besides, this was Blairsville, her hometown, a tight-knit community of fewer than 1,000 people, nestled in the mountains and surrounded by stunning views. Everyone knew everyone. It was a kind of place where danger felt distant, almost unimaginable. If there was anywhere she could feel safe, it was here. And Kristi didn't always walk alone, at least not technically. Often she spent the time catching up on the phone with her new boyfriend, Douglas Davis. He lived a couple of hours away in Atlanta. Their relationship was still fresh, just a few weeks in, but it was a bright spot in her life after a recent divorce. He was also a minister, and as someone who was deeply devoted in her faith and spirituality, Kristi felt like this new relationship was sent by God. The last time the couple saw each other was just the day before in Atlanta, where the two had a lunch date. Between pursuing her degree in medical lab technology, being a devoted mother to her teenage son, and cautiously stepping into new love, Kristi had plenty to look forward to. That night was no different. Shortly before 9 p.m., she left her parents' house for her usual stroll down Jones Creek Road, a rural two-lane road just off the Zell Miller Mountain Parkway. A familiar route, a familiar routine, but this walk would be her last. Minutes into her walk that evening, Kristi called her boyfriend, Doug, using her Bluetooth earbuds as she strolled along the quiet road. The two were simply catching up, likely sharing the details of their day, nothing unusual, nothing out of the ordinary. Then suddenly, Doug heard Kristi say that a car had pulled up behind her. Moments later, through the phone, he heard a commotion, shuffling, a struggle, and then Kristi's terrified voice yelling, "Don't take me." Her desperate plea was the last clear thing he heard before the line dissolved into static. Doug said he was also able to make out Kristi telling the attacker that she had a son, "Please don't hurt me," and that she lived in the area her entire life. Doug knew instantly something terrible was happening. Still connected to Kristi's call, he frantically tried to get help, first dialing 911 with a separate phone. But because Kristi was in Union County and Doug was in Atlanta, dispatch told him they couldn't assist and directed him to a non-emergency number for the Union County Sheriff's Department. When he called, he couldn't get through. Panicked, he kept trying until finally, just before 9:30 p.m., he reached Kristi's mother, Joanne. He told her in horror that he had been on the phone with her as she was taken. It wasn't until Joanne called 911 that local law enforcement was notified, nearly an hour after Kristi had been abducted around 9:15 p.m. And as investigators often say, the first minutes after an abduction are the most crucial. Time that in this case tragically had already slipped away. Had someone been watching Kristi, following her night after night, memorizing her routine? Or was this simply a horrific case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time? In an instant, her quiet evening ritual turned into her family's worst nightmare. Search efforts began immediately. Joanne retraced the path Kristi would have walked as deputies arrived on the scene. Kristi's father and brother joined the desperate search, while Doug rushed from Atlanta to Union County. But at first, There was nothing. No footprints, no trail, no evidence. It was as if Christy had vanished into thin air. Through the long, anxious hours of the night, Doug joined the Cornwell family at Joanne's house. Christy's best friend came too, and together they prayed, clinging to any hope that she might still be okay. Deep down, they knew the situation was dire, but if anyone could fight, it was Christy. She had always been strong-willed, and with her background in law enforcement, she knew how to defend herself. Authorities quickly set up a command post near the Cornwell home at a nearby church, and by the time Doug arrived from Atlanta, GBI investigators were already on scene. Doug recounted to them exactly what he had heard on the phone: the sound of the car, the struggle, Christy's desperate pleas. Investigators believe Christy may have been intentionally giving clues in those final moments, knowing Doug was still listening, hoping it might help identify her attacker. As is common in cases like this, investigators first look closely at Doug. A significant other is often the primary suspect when someone goes missing, but they were able to confirm his alibi. He had in fact been in Atlanta during the call. He also went on both local and national news in the days that followed, speaking about Christy's disappearance in an effort to bring attention to her case. Some members of the public found his tone and behavior odd, sparking speculation, but authorities thoroughly vetted his story and soon cleared him of any involvement in Christy's disappearance.
Again with you, Douglas, do you keep playing that last phone call back over and over in your mind?
You know, it is the most horrific thing you'll ever have. It won't go away. I don't want it to, but yet it is so painful to know that the one you love, someone that you've grown to be so fond of in so short a period of time.
You've been dating 6 weeks?
Yeah, something like that. But it seemed like a lifetime. Every day was full of joy and full of our relationship, and just that brief moment that is just snatched away from you. It sends a message so loud that we have just the day, just the moment, and we need to live it fully as Christy did.
I can't imagine being on your end of that phone call, certainly not on hers, but being in such a helpless position as yours. What details can you share with us about that phone call?
Well, we had been talking about plans for the upcoming week. She was frustrated with her school where she was going to. They had lost her application for fall semester, and she was having to go back to deal with that. And so we were just talking about all those events, but it turned a positive. She turned a positive out of it. We can have dinner on Thursday night. And I said, "Way cool, that's good. I'll make it my plan." And then there's a car coming. Hang on just a minute. And then all of these things began to take place. And I had made a commitment to her just 2 days earlier.
What do you mean all of these things?
What was happening? The abduction began.
It was clear to you what was going on?
Her first sounds made that very clear to me. It was unmistakable what I was hearing going on. And
what were her first sounds?
She was screaming. And you knew immediately what was happening. And I was helpless. I'd made a commitment to her just a few days earlier that I would protect her with my life. And yet right then, there was nothing. I was 2.5 hours away, might have been 1,000,000 miles away.
Oh my goodness.
And I couldn't go. But you want to do something. And I was just frantic trying to find the solution, and yet there was none.
Christy's brother, Richard, spent the night searching up and down the road and through the nearby woods, desperate to find any clue that might lead them to his sister, hoping she was still close by. Exhausted and disoriented in the early hours of the next morning, he stumbled upon something that immediately caught his attention: a single flip-flop lying on the side of the road. He knew instantly it belonged to Christy. This was just about a mile from her home. Authorities quickly joined the search in that area. They soon discovered the matching flip-flop, as well as a pair of glasses and a Bluetooth earbud, confirming that Christy had indeed been there. In the days that followed, investigators with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation combed hundreds of acres of land in the surrounding area, conducting a desperate search for any clue. Their efforts appeared to gain a lead when a caretaker at the church where the command post was set up reported seeing a light-covered SUV on the road outside around the time of Christy's disappearance. This observation seemed to jog a memory for Doug. He recalled what he had previously considered a minor occurrence involving Christy and a similar vehicle just days before her abduction. On the Saturday night before she vanished, Christy and Doug had gone on one of their evening walks, likely the same route Christy would have taken the night she disappeared, when a silver SUV approached them from behind, followed for a few feet, paused briefly, and then drove away. Could this have been the same SUV the church caretaker saw? Had the driver been planning to abduct Christy that night, but abandoned the attempt because she wasn't alone? Or was it merely a coincidence? The similarity of the sightings left investigators and her loved ones questioning whether this vehicle was connected to her tragic disappearance. 3 days into the investigation, another significant tip emerged. A neighbor mowing his yard on Natalie Dam Road, roughly 3 miles from where Christy disappeared, found a cell phone. Authorities quickly confirmed that the phone belonged to Christy. Evidence suggested it had been thrown from a moving vehicle, and its location indicated that the driver may have been leaving Union County, Georgia, heading north on State Route 325, possibly heading into either Tennessee or North Carolina. Investigators had hoped to recover fingerprints from the phone to help identify the suspect, but unfortunately, the person who found it had wiped it down, leaving no usable forensic evidence. As the weeks passed, investigators expanded their search and canvassed the surrounding areas, but after a week and a half, efforts had been scaled back due to budgetary constraints. Frustrated but determined, the Cornwell family took matters into their own hands. Christy's father, an avid outdoorsman, organized ground searches with members of the local community, while her brother Richard conducted aerial searches from planes. The family also raised enough money to offer a $50,000 reward for any information about Christy's disappearance. About a month later, nearly 10 miles south of where Christy had been taken, a hunter stumbled upon a campsite, prompting questions about whether it could be connected to her abduction. Initially, this discovery raised concern because of Georgia's history with violent cases in rural areas. The campsite ended up being tied to Meredith Hope Emerson's 2008 murder by Gary Michael Hilton, known as the National Forest serial killer. The brutality of Meredith's crime, found murdered while hiking on Blood Mountain, shook the local community and left Christy's family deeply unsettled. They feared that Christy might have met a similar fate, or worse, could still be alive somewhere, held captive by an unknown assailant. Christy was familiar with Meredith's case, and it had received widespread coverage across local news outlets in Georgia. However, Gary Hilton was already behind bars, serving life sentence by the time Christy disappeared. While the campsite's proximity was eerie, it ultimately did not bring investigators any closer to identifying Christy's abductor. Given the likelihood that Christy's abductor may have been someone she knew, consistent with national data showing that the majority of violent crimes are committed by acquaintances rather than strangers, investigators expanded their focus. Considering Christy's background as a probation officer and her work in law enforcement, authorities meticulously reviewed records of every ex-convict, registered sex offender, and person she had contact with in the Union County and the surrounding areas. Despite these efforts, unfortunately, this line of investigation did not yield any concrete leads. By December 2009, months after Christy's disappearance, authorities began pursuing a new lead and had a fresh suspect in their sights. Police revealed that they had been investigating a string of attempted abductions that occurred just days before Christy vanished. One such incident happened in Murphy, North Carolina, about 25 miles from where Christy was abducted. The woman told dispatch that on the night of August the 2nd, around 9 p.m., she was out for an evening stroll when a car struck her slightly, causing her to fall. The driver got out and began approaching her, but she screamed. Another vehicle passed by, and the attacker returned to his car and drove off. The vehicle matched the description of the silver Nissan believed to be seen near Christy's abduction. The circumstances were eerily similar. A woman walking alone at night approached by a vehicle. This North Carolina woman provided a sketch of the man, described as a white male in his mid-20s with dark hair, giving investigators their first visual lead. Not long after, another attempt surfaced in the jurisdiction near Atlanta. A woman reported being attacked on the side of the road roughly 2 months before Christy's disappearance, but she managed to fight off her assailant. She gave authorities a detailed description, allowing them to create a full-front forensic sketch of the attacker's face, and this made it clear. A serial predator was stalking women along rural roads from North Carolina to Georgia, and it was highly likely this same individual abducted Kristi Cornwell. The pattern was too precise to ignore. Rural roads, women alone, approaching vehicles, late evenings. Then, at the start of 2010, 2 anonymous letters arrived simultaneously, one at the Union County Sheriff's Office in Georgia, and the other at the Cherokee County, North Carolina Sheriff's Office, where the Murphy incident occurred. The letters, believed to be written by a woman, claimed that her 27-year-old grandson, who drove a Nissan Xterra, matched the sketch. She alleged suspicious behavior on his part months prior, including returning home on the night of August the 12th with scratches on his hands and face, appearing anxious and claiming he had been in a fight. Authorities initially wondered if it was a hoax. The letters contained no identifiers, no fingerprints, and no return address. Could this actually be a concerned grandmother or a deliberate attempt to mislead investigators? The letters raise as many questions as answers. Not ready to give up, authorities asked Kristi's mother, Joanne, to help. They requested she make a public plea to the woman who wrote the letters. Joanne recorded a heartfelt YouTube message, showing empathy and encouraging the anonymous tipster to come forward, assuring them that investigators could verify or dismiss her grandson's involvement.
I'm Joanne Cornwell, Kristi Cornwell's mother. Christy was abducted on August 11, 2009 in Union County, Georgia. We don't know where she is. She's been gone almost 6 months now, and I am in a nightmare every day. I'm so worried about, is she okay? Does she have enough food? Is she being abused? Is she cold? And I want to talk to the grandmother that wrote the anonymous letter to the Union County, Georgia and Cherokee County, North Carolina Sheriff's Office, saying that she had suspicions that her grandson may have been involved in Christy's disappearance. We have a lot in common. We have a bond. We both are mothers. We're both grandmothers. And I certainly know how you feel about your grandson. I love my grandson and all of my grandchildren every bit as much as I love my own children. So I know how hard this is for you. Your suspicions are not just a coincidence. There was a time in early August that your grandson was visiting you. And I know you're really concerned. You realize that the sketch of the Ranger, North Carolina suspect and the vehicle looked much like what your grandson did and what he drove. It is not for us to prove that your grandson had anything to do with this. That is law enforcement's job. But I know that you are struggling and so concerned for your grandson like I am for Christy. I know it's hard to eat, hard to sleep for you, just like it is for me. Our lives will forevermore be bound with this abduction of Christy. Whether your grandson had anything to do with it or not, you're concerned that he did. And so I just ask for you to come forward and give the law enforcement the information they need, and then let them prove or disprove his innocence or guilt. I really feel for you. I pray that you can feel how I feel, and please come forward. We need your help desperately.
Despite her appeal, the letter writer never came forward. Even a GBI agent wrote a message directly to the woman asking her to come forward. Dear concerned grandmother, I was pleased to receive your letter in reference to your concerns about your grandson. I had hoped to hear from you as a result of our pleas for information. My name is Brian Whitby. I am a special agent at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and I am responsible for finding Christy. I have worked towards that goal since her disappearance. I understand from your letter that you believe that your grandson may be involved with Christy's disappearance. You cannot ignore the chain of coincidences surrounding your grandson's 12-day stay with you in August 2009. I believe you are a godly and caring person. You made the right decision by contacting us with your letter. I now ask you to continue your journey with us and contact me. I understand that you have concerns about your family, and I ask that you pray about your decision and do what is right. I ask that you contact me and we can eliminate any doubt in your mind about your grandson. We can learn together if your suspicions are mistaken about your grandson. I pray you can understand why I must ask you to take the next step in our journey and contact me. You can call me on my cellular telephone at 706-969-5706. Email me at bwibdy811@yahoo.com or write me at 79 Cobb Vantress Drive, Cleveland, Georgia, 30528. Sincerely, Brian Whitby. Months passed, but neither the GBI nor the Cornwell family lost hope. Each lead, each tip kept the search alive, even as frustration mounted and the trail grew cold. And then, in April of 2010, a stunning development shook the investigation wide open. Roughly 100 miles from Christy's home in the Brookwood area of Atlanta, police located a vehicle wanted in connection with the kidnapping and rape of a 19-year-old Kennesaw State University student in Gilmer County just the day before. When officers attempted to stop the driver, he refused to surrender. He told them he was suicidal and claimed he had rigged his vehicle with explosives. After a tense 3-hour standoff, SWAT officers and a bomb robot approached the SUV, but it was too late. The driver had taken his own life. The vehicle was a black Nissan Xterra, and the man behind the wheel was 42-year-old James Scott Carringer. But James Carringer wasn't just wanted for the rape in Gilmer County. Days earlier, police in Montgomery, Alabama had been searching for a vehicle of the same make and model and the attempted abduction of a 10-year-old girl during a church Easter egg hunt. Surveillance video captured the terrifying moment. The suspect forced the girl into his car, but she miraculously escaped. The driver fled. The man, too, was believed to be James Carringer. The details were chilling. James Carringer's appearance bore a striking resemblance to the forensic sketches released in Christie's case. His vehicle, a Nissan Xterra, matched witnesses' accounts tied not only to Christie's abduction, but also to attempted kidnappings in both Georgia and North Carolina. Tips soon began flooding in, pointing investigators even closer to the truth. James had actually lived just 18 miles from the Cornwell home in Young Harris, Georgia. A search of his property revealed that he didn't just own the black Xterra, he also owned 2 others, a white and a silver Nissan Xterra. The silver one matched the description given by the witness in Christie's case. Disturbingly, investigators learned that James Carringer had been driving that silver SUV around the time Christy disappeared. But by September, only a month later, he suddenly and randomly handed the vehicle off to his stepson. Coincidence, or the most crucial clue yet? James' family told investigators that he had a history of secret behavior, turning off his phone for long stretches, traveling without telling anyone, and carefully covering his tracks. They described him as being under immense psychological stress around the time of the abductions, particularly due to family issues involving his daughter and stepdaughter. When he died, James Carringer left behind a suicide note. In it, he confessed to being sexually abused as a child, but said little else. Most of the note was never made public. Was his self-deletion itself a confession? Did the truth about Christie's fate die with him? To this day, investigators believe James Scott Carringer is the most probable suspect in Kristi Cornwell's disappearance. He lived just miles away. He drove the exact vehicle seen stalking women in the area. He matched the sketch. He had already attempted and committed similar crimes, and yet, without physical evidence or a direct confession, the case remains unsolved, haunted by the possibility that the man who knew the answers took them to his grave. At this point, months had passed, and Christie's body had never been recovered. For her family, that small detail meant everything. With no remains, there was still hope. Hope that somehow Christy was alive somewhere, being held, waiting to be found. They clung to that fragile possibility through every passing day. But that hope was shattered in the cruelest way imaginable. On January 1st, 2011, Christy's younger brother, Richard, was out searching yet again. He had never stopped, never given up on trying to bring his sister home. This time, he was combing a rugged 2-square-mile area based on intelligence provided to him by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Cell phone records had shown that James Scott Carringer's phone pinged in those woods on the night Christy vanished, so Richard decided to take it upon himself to search there. And it was there, about 9 miles from where she was last seen, and just 75 yards off McCason Creek Road, that Richard stumbled upon what every sibling prays they'll never have to see. Scattered in the leaves of the forest floor, partially buried and hidden beneath debris, were skeletal remains. He instantly knew. The devastating reality sank in. Richard had found his sister. He had found Christy. 2 days later, on January 3rd, 2011, dental records confirmed what the family already knew in their hearts. The remains belonged to 38-year-old Kristi Leigh Cornwell. Her body had been burned, leaving her cause of death undetermined. It was a cruel twist of fate that the same brother who had ridden horses with Christy as a child, who had shared a carefree mountain upbringing with her, was now the one to find her in death. Though there was still no physical evidence directly tying James to Christy's murder, the circumstantial case was overwhelming. His vehicles, his movements, the timing, the attempted abductions, all of it pointed in his direction. Investigators continued to name James Scott Carringer as the primary suspect in her abduction and death, but the Cornwell family's nightmare had finally come to its most heartbreaking conclusion. Christy was gone, and she was never coming home. Even with the discovery of Christy's remains and the overwhelming circumstantial evidence pointing toward James Scott Carringer, her case is still technically unsolved. James's self-deletion left the investigators without the confession or hard forensic evidence they needed to close the file once and for all. The question remains: did James Carringer take the truth of Christy's final moments to the grave with him? Or is there still more to uncover? More witnesses, more evidence, more answers waiting to be found. We have no direct evidence that Carringer is the murderer of Kristi Cornwell. Past GBI Director Vernon Keenan said, "He remains our prime suspect on a series of circumstances that point to him. Because we have no direct evidence, this will remain an active and open investigation at GBI." For Kristi's family, the pain lies not only in their loss, but in the uncertainty. They know who they believe is responsible, but the absence of definitive proof leaves a shadow over her story, a cruel twist of fate that sometimes justice can feel just out of reach. This case remains open, and investigators are still pleading with the public to come forward if they know anything that could help bring closure to Kristi's family. Kristi Cornwell was more than a headline, more than a case file, more than the grim way her story ended. She was a mother, a daughter, a sister, and a friend. She was a woman who loved the outdoors, who found peace in evening walks along country roads, and who had so much life left to live. Her son is left without a mother. Her family left not knowing what exactly happened to her that fateful night. And yet her story ends in tragedy and without full answers. Investigators believe James Scott Carringer was the man responsible, but without hard evidence or a confession, the truth died with him. That means Kristi's case remains open, technically unsolved, and her family may never know exactly what happened in her final moments. Sometimes, not knowing is even more painful than knowing the darkest truth. It leaves families suspended between hope and despair, forced to carry both grief and unanswered questions for the rest of their lives. It has now been more than 15 years since Kristi was abducted, and still, the questions linger. Her family has been left to wonder if they will ever know the full truth, or if those answers are forever lost. For Kristi's loved ones, and for all the women whose names we've spoken tonight, closure still matters. Justice still matters. And maybe, just maybe, someone out there knows something that could finally bring peace, finally bring closure to the Cornwell family, and bring closure to Kristi's memory. If you have any information regarding the disappearance and death of Kristi Cornwell, please contact the Georgia Bureau of Investigation at 1-800-597-TIPS, the Union County Sheriff's Office at 706-439-6080, or the Cherokee, North Carolina Sheriff's Office at 828-835-4152. This has been Joshua John with Behind the Headlines, and until next time, stay safe.